Go.
And welcome to another edition of the Fear the Sun podcast. I am Jim McClure, of course, one of your hosts, and we have a special guest on with us today, a special guest that I'm personally really excited about. I'm starting to think I just get excited easily. Maybe these people are important. I don't know. Hopefully we'll find out. I hear his name is Nolan. He does something called Roll20. We'll figure out what that is. Of course, as always, here we have Keegan on the other seat. Say hi, Keegan.
Hi, Keegan.
And we're all written in the 80s, so there we go. And then today, the man of the hour, the man that we're here to talk about, we have Nolan.
Nolan.
I've been reading Gunslinger.
Nope.
I've been reading the Gunslinger series. You got to go with
that
it.
Nolan Ryan thing. I'm originally from Kansas, so it's Nolan. Keep those fastballs rolling.
Baseball humor
kids
is
of the
exactly
80s.
what our audience wants.
Yeah.
Football season's around the
But
corner.
no,
I'm not going to hold it against you.
Nolan of Roll20 here as our guest. Of course, the man, the myth, the legend, the architect of the whole reason that we're here. Nolan, say hi.
Howdy. How are you guys doing?
I don't think they can talk back yet, but we'll see. Okay, so of course, like I said, we've got Nolan, and we're going to be talking a lot about Roll20, how it developed, how we all got here, which of course is Roll20 is what the GM Academy calls as our home, because that is where we started, that is where our community is, that is where we have continued to grow, and we all feel very much attached to Roll20 and what it has done for tabletop. And it's going to sort of lead us into our theme here of this podcast, which is developments in tabletop, how we have gone from the traditional pen and paper and dice Gygax version of tabletop into the 21st century and all of the new wonderful stuff that we have sort of developed from now, from online tabletop to hybrids and everything else. So that's going to sort of be our theme here today. But the first thing, our very first segment, of course, we want to do the GM Academy update. We want to give you all an idea of what's been happening. Of course, we have our regular features coming out. We've got the new workshop formats that are coming out. Of course, Dungeon Do's and Don'ts coming out every single Friday. These new podcasts coming to you bi-weekly every single Thursday night. And the couple big exciting things, this week we actually just got past 400 subscribers on YouTube, and we are like this far, like it's like an inch and a half to 2 inches from having 10,000 views on the our YouTube page. So that's wonderful. Obviously, we have the website that's up and running, which is just phenomenal. Still a bit of a work in progress, but it's been going very well. And Keegan, how many members do we have on the Roll20 GM Academy now?
I think we're breaking it and busting it at around 450
We're going to have that conversation.
No, don't worry about that. Don't worry about the load times or
we're gonna have a conversation about
1,000 avatars.
What we thought groups are going to be used for and intention, and what GM Academy specifically has done. It's just blown all of that up to where we're going, what are we supposed to do now?
We take things to the next level no matter what it is. Whether
you
it's
have
Roll20 or RPGs or just anything in general. We're like, okay, what is it? And how do we blow it up? And that's what we do.
You have succeeded.
And I think Keegan is the lie we've been telling him that we're all 450 of us are playing one game, right? We're keeping that going.
Technically, that's why, and we're okay because we're all in the same game.
Yeah.
We're all involved in the game. We're just really interested in it.
I can check those stats. We can figure that out real quick. Well,
before he starts clicking to other websites to check statistics, let's get back into this. Of course, that's what recently has been going on with the GM Academy. We are super excited about all the growth that's been going on in the continued, of course, production. Like I said, with the podcast here that we're doing every week, our goal, or bi-weekly, I should say, our goal is every single time we will have a new wonderful guest to talk about, because you all cannot listen to me and Keegan ramble nonsensically for an hour and still stay tuned. So we're trying to at least make it semi-interesting. Okay, that has been the GM Academy update. The next thing that we are going into, our second segment, what is new in tabletop? What has been going on in the world of tabletop? And there is so much news going on in tabletop because we're right near GenCon. We are right near the big event of the year because, forget about PAX. We're sticking with GenCon because it's an hour and a half from me, so I consider it.
Bunch of cheaters.
It seems like a personal bias. I don't know about that. I think there's some PAX hype as well. I'm excited about PAX,
sir. But we are coming close, and like I said, today's theme kind of that we're talking about is new developments within the tabletop world. Because, of course, we have seen a lot of new developments, new things happening from the traditional way that we all play tabletop. You know, it started out as pen and paper and dice and Gygax, and that's what you had, and that was the end-all be-all. And of course, we've all moved into the 21st century, and our wonderful hobby has likewise moved into the 21st century, and now we are seeing developments and changing the standard thing that some people hold so dear, myself too. I always have to have paper character sheets. I can't do a digital character sheet. It somehow offends me. No offense to Nolan and his digital character sheets.
No, this is a very true thing. I was actually having this conversation recently on, of all places. I occasionally will swing by 4chan because I feel like it's a good hit to the ego to like be. If you wander in there, you're going to get punched in the face and you're going to be reminded of 6 or 7 things you're doing wrong. And so I like to go in there and have a conversation. And somebody was talking about how our introduction of character sheets at the beginning of the year was a failed experiment. And the numbers on that would point quite the other direction, that people really like it. But I was like, yeah, you know, despite people using it, I wouldn't call it an experiment. It was a thing that these people wanted, and it's nothing that I would use. Like, I'm going to use maybe the attributes for some roles. Like if there's a 4th edition and I'm playing something where dexterity is part of every role I do, I might do that. But otherwise, give me paper. And that was something, if you go back and watch the very first live streams we did, we were really insistent upon, we will never do character sheets because it's not part of the table. Like we were real jerks about it. So I'm with you. I agree. I think it's something to be held.
Fortunately, you're successful, so you're not a jerk anymore. You're just eccentric, and that's okay.
Yeah.
You're like in a whole new realm.
Exactly.
Once you hit that success level, everything you say is just eccentric and interesting instead of just being a jerk and weird.
I don't think my wife looks at it that way, but
Well, so speaking of being a jerk and eccentric, you mentioned 4th edition. Are you telling me you're a 4th edition player?
We all were weaned on 4th edition, the 3 of us, and this whole Roll20 thing is a spot of insane luck that we started the Kickstarter and we were like, you know, every time we come to a design decision, let's try to do whatever a tabletop would need, because we don't know enough about any of these other games to make design decisions to incorporate things. So what do I need to move the token, not move it as a grid? What do I need to accomplish things that trading cards is a really great example of something that, you know, you can have power cards for 4th edition, but we really sat down and went, all right, what's the broadest interpretation of cards that we could do? And our starting point for that was actually, I think, Settlers of Catan originally was a way that we went, okay, let's test, and that we've incorporated enough ways to use cards that this game works. But yeah, we were big 4th edition guys, which isn't too surprising in that we were also really big World of Warcraft guys once upon a time. So it's a really nice transition to, oh, here's my, you know, talent tree almost in terms of the amount of crazy options I have for hitting you.
Right, and that's I've said it so many times, and me and Keegan are at complete odds. He already knows where I'm going with this statement. Not only do I think I like 4th edition, I still play 4th edition. I think it's a good system. Not only do I think it's a good system, I think it's a great system, and it is the most appropriate system to run for brand new tabletop players. I hold this massive opinion that I am glad now that I am vindicated that Nolan supports everything I just said.
It's one of those things that it really is a great system for getting people into the how to play with the stats of things. You've got to keep an eye on it because it doesn't encourage role playing as well as a lot. I mean, you sit down and play a game like Fate for the first time, and that game is going to force you to do role-playing things. You are going to have to come up with feats. You are going to have to, you know, figure out a way to interact with story in mind. Same as something like Dungeon World, where you really can't just go into it like you can only hit there. Like that's going to get really boring really fast if you don't make a narrative to go with it. But I really do think that the 4th edition, I mean, it obviously worked for me. I'm here and I've played
Well, it's now been said, and I'm just going to call the hour right now because 4th edition created Roll20. Keegan, you're wrong. Jim, you're right.
I would like to say that I completely agree with both of you. It is the perfect game for people that want to play a video game in a role-playing world.
Yeah.
When you look at it, it's the bridge of, I want to play a video game, but pretend I'm role-playing. And so that's a bridge. But I think it's the loosest game that I would ever describe as a role-playing game because it is board gamey. If you want to play a board game, I think it's great. It's really fun, entertaining, and streamlined. But if you want to start role-playing,
what's your preference? What's your game?
Well, I was gonna say, hold on, before we go to that, because I'm trying to hold to some sort of like outline here.
No, you got your chance. You spouted for the dish. I at least want to know what Keegan likes, and then we can run off into the hills. So
I had the perfect segue, and I will hail to the authority of Nolan. Nolan is now your primary host, and he has spoken.
I'm taking over to this podcast. Keegan, what's your game? I gotta know. He's cutting you off. It's like he wants to keep it a secret. What's he so afraid of?
Well, because it's not Legend of the Five Rings.
No, my ultimate is no books, no dice, no character sheet, no nothing. That's actually where I come from. Now, because of that extreme, I do compromises. Like currently, I've been running a 10-month-long campaign in Pathfinder, which I call my compromise, because it had enough structure for the players as they felt overwhelmed by the choices of just having freedom. And it was like too much. And it was a game that I could mod enough and take rules and start shaping it and say, no, this is not going to exist. Enough that I was okay with it and could still have my creative freedom. And so I call it my compromise.
Okay.
Yeah, so that I'm way
I wouldn't look at Pathfinder as low on. When I look at the Pathfinder character sheet, I think that is the most intimidating character sheet in gaming currently because it's just pages and pages of numbers that just I don't even know what to do. I will go by the GenCon Pathfinder Society room just to be afraid next week.
I totally agree with all that. I totally agree that there's other systems, but it's hard it takes time to train players how to role play. And so sometimes they get really nervous if they're just been playing a system for a long time or just so new. Like when I first started my campaign, I grabbed people that weren't playing. We were playing on Steam. I said, hey guys, you want to try this thing on Roll20? I really miss role playing. And they're, well, what's role playing? So I said, okay, let's do it. So I had to find something with a little bit more structure that they could look at.
Yeah, it's funny hearing you talk about that. The guy who DMs my live sessions, he recently did a stripped down version of Dungeon World that he made for kids. His kids and the friends of his kids who are, 7, 8 years old watching Adventure Time. And he was talking about how not afraid to role play they were. Like they were so ready to jump off the cliff, to have laser eyes, to do all these things that they just wanted to do instead of worrying about min-maxing their mechanics and that sort of stuff. And it was really interesting to be playtesting the game. Like he did session with them, session with us, session with them, session with us to, kind of get it to the best point where it was something that us old folks that do want rules could sit and play with kids to give the boundaries, but at the same time wasn't, hampering their imagination. And it was such an interesting way to build a game. I don't know what he's going to do with it eventually, but it was really interesting just to see, what you're talking about in terms of teaching role playing is that we had to be taught, and the 7, 8 year olds they just got it. Like
exactly.
That's what life is, right? We just sit around and we say we want to do something.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of it comes through the fact that as you grow older, there's less opportunities to use your imagination. Because we get in reality-based work and all things that, okay, we have to fix this problem, this and that. Everything's reality-based. It's really hard to spend time just being imaginative. So as a kid, they're like, this is the best ever. This is my whole world.
Yep. Agreed.
Yeah.
So with all of that being said, obviously, it's sort of like you talked about, there's a big difference. And I know, of course, Keegan, you say you run Pathfinder. I always have to put the asterisk beside it because for some reason, only say you run gridless Pathfinder, which is its own little beast.
Yes. You called it Pathfinder Compromise, is what?
Yeah.
Something is that the PG term you're using now? Pathfinder Compromise.
I assume every role-playing game is broken when I go into it. And so
the only broken games are those that have poor design.
There's a million people, or there's millions of people playing, so there's millions of tastes. So I assume everything's broken when I go into it and go, how do I fit this into my taste? That's why.
Oh, no, sir. There's only 8 kinds of taste and different levels of each one of those.
We are so going to have that someday as an event. It's going to be great.
Me and you, the 8 kinds of fun versus narrative and challenge or whatever your crazy nonsense is. But what we were talking about was interesting because we were talking about battle maps. We're talking about different ways that tabletops approach. And Nolan, of course, you were saying within the Roll20, sort of one of the big initial thoughts was, what is a utility that we can provide people to do this? Because if we're just strictly talking, if we want a very narrative-based system, a very rules-light system, we can go on Skype and have a conversation and play a real rules-light system. But what Roll20 does is give, of course, the versatility to be able to do, essentially a traditional tabletop with miniatures, a board, everything, right online with people. In my online gaming group, I've got one guy in California who's not Keegan. I've got a guy out in jolly old England across the pond, and then actually another guy in Ohio because I got to have one other Ohioan in my party if I'm going to play. But it gives the ability to have this wonderful dynamic to it, and it's one of the first, I feel, real significant changes to tabletop.
Well, I think what's been funny about it is seeing the different ways that people use it in terms of there are so many games that you wouldn't have to use it for, and people will come to us just because, well, their dice roller is really good. Or I had somebody today telling me that they were using it just because the sound. That the shared sound was better than shared sound that they had anywhere else. Trying to get it synced for everybody in a Skype hangout, and what a difference that was for them. And I was like, "That's the thing." Like, and they listed off 10 different programs that they use to try to simulate that sort of shared music, shared sound effects, and they said, none of these things worked as well as just loading it up in Roll20. It's like, well, if that's what works, that's such a cool and weird thing. But it has enough of those utilities for enough different bases that it's easy to get a community here and to bring in people. That's one of the things that's just wild about Roll20 to me, is that we add 900 people a day pretty much no matter what now. And that's not a huge advertising effort on our part or anything like that. It's just a natural people out there talking about it and bringing their friends along for the ride.
I'm sorry, I was just doing some head math. So if you're getting 900 a day, so the GM Academy is responsible for about 10% of that, I think.
That's all we're doing.
Ridiculous.
No, it's unique. It's different. I mean, honestly, I'll say one of the big reasons.
What are we getting?
I think we got some
sort of feedback. Yeah.
Mic glitch.
Who is it?
Are we 20 minutes into it? Like that one.
Probably about that. Let me know.
20 minutes into it, I guess.
Let me know if it gets bad again.
Exactly the same.
Yeah, when you're talking, you're getting a real harsh buzz.
Click, click, click. I think we're just past the static now.
We passed it?
Yep.
Maybe.
All right, we'll edit that out in post. I have this weird glitch with the microphone. Every 20 minutes, I get static on it, and I've been told it's the driver for Blue Icicle, the USB plug-in, and I did all of the remove and reinstall and thought I wasn't going to have an issue, but I am. So if it starts doing it again, we'll just pause it and cut it out in post. Okay, so getting back to it, one of the big things, like I said, I mean, I really see Roll20, of course, as a massive utility that, a lot of other things don't have. I mean, when I first discovered Roll20, I was looking to tabletop more. I was just really, really getting into it, and the 2 games I was running a week wasn't enough for me. I mean, I needed more. And so I was on, actually, Reddit, the wonderful website, and it had suggested to me, because I think it was soon after Roll20 had launched. How long has Roll20 been up?
April of 2012.
Okay. Yeah, so soon after, I think I joined maybe September of 2012, few months after it anyway, found it. I went from 17 hours from discovering that Roll20 existed to having a game ready with 4 people. And that was playing a non-traditional system, Legend of the Five Rings. And that one of my favorite features and why I recommend so many people to Roll20, aside from all the other great features, is it has such an awesome looking for group section. There are so many people, if you want to do online tabletop, you go to Roll20. It's just what's known. It's what you do. It has the biggest community. It's the easiest place to find people.
That's what I was saying. The looking for group system is such a weird thing to us in that it's so not what we intended, because that wasn't our concern. Was there were 3 of us. I was in Vegas, Riley was in Kansas, Richard was in Washington DC, and we needed a way for us to play. And so the looking for group system has been this thing that we're adding on that we aren't using as much. So it's such an odd area that we're constantly going, all right, how do we make this work? How do we fix this in a way? Because we when I look at the looking for group system, I only see the problems, is how I feel. But it's getting better. It's just not yet to where I feel like I would tell absolutely everybody, just get on the looking for group system and it'll be there. We've done a good job, but there's definitely more to do, is how I feel.
Fair enough. Well, with all of this different stuff that we're talking about, again, within our theme here today is we are changing the way we see tabletop being played. I mean, everything I see about it, it's going to more of this online model, mainly because there are so many other people in the world that do not have enough people around them or the ability to find people around them to play a game. I mentioned earlier, I've got my guy across the pond, as it were. He lives in a small rural town in England where people don't play fantasy games about samurai and magic. They just don't do it. And if it was not for Roll20, he would not have the ability to play at all. And it's bringing in a much larger user base into tabletop in general.
I think it's interesting. We see that our users in general are a little bit older than what I would expect a typical gaming average to skew, and I think a large reason for it is that in college, when you're playing games like this, you've just got, you go grab everybody down the hall, and it's just a much more natural occurrence. But then, everybody moves away, or you just can't find somebody that you like, that you want to deal with where you are. And so, yeah, there is this real transition to people using online tools to play with each other. And I don't think that's any different from anything that we even see in where the dating world is currently. That we're using this ability that we have to contact people further away to our advantage. So
I mean, yeah, I personally still hold the internet's not going to catch on, but I mean, the trends are starting to work against me.
It's getting there.
It's getting there. I mean, I vote for it. I hope it works out, but we'll have to see. Some of the other, interesting things that as I watch, I'm very big on watching sort of the indie development of games. Obviously, Kickstarter, Indiegogo have become the 2 big things to go to for it. Obviously, Roll20, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, started as a Kickstarter project. We'll talk about that here in a moment. But one of the other ones sort of within our RPG news that I have watched sort of as it's developed, as it's come to be, is a system called Golem Arcana. This was a Kickstarter that actually went through October of 2013 last year. It got funded over $500,000 when it was done and concluded. And it is now just sort of officially getting its pre-launch at GenCon and its full launch in September of this year. And Golem Arcana is sort of an interesting hybrid between everything else that we're talking about, in that it's a physical battle map and miniatures on the table in front of you. And it has also a online component to the game. So it is blending our physical online tabletop experience with online, almost video game-esque style play. And it works where it has essentially a Bluetooth stylus, and you touch it to your figure, you touch it to where he moves. You move the piece, it moves on the map. When you attack, you touch your figure and you touch it, it does line of sight, it does It does all of your splash damage, your areas of effect. It does all of that for you, and you can play it with someone across the table, or you can play it with someone across the globe. And it's truly sort of a combination of, physical tabletop with online play, and these are some of the advances that we're seeing. I don't know, either of you heard or followed the Golem Arcana as it came through?
I'm aware of it. It's one of those things, though, it strikes me it's really tough market to break, is the way I look at it, in terms of, you look at the amount of money that Disney has sunk into Infinity, or that has been sunk into Skylanders and things like that, and they take on with a very specific market of people that have a very specific disposable income in terms of, this is what you're getting for Christmas. Whereas I think that the way that role-playing repeats, to get enough of the items you're going to need to play it and to get everybody to buy in, and that's one of the things that I think about with our system, that by making the entry free, that's one of the smartest things we did, because trying to get somebody to role play for the first time and asking them to pony up anything is a dumb. Even asking somebody to download something when they're getting into role playing for the first time is a hurdle. Map tools, it's free, it's right there, and there are people who are never going to want to go and download that program because I don't know what this is. I haven't heard about this, and I don't want to mess with the setting it up and things like that. And so it looks, what I've seen of the Kickstarter, if I'm remembering the right thing, it looked gorgeous. The concept art was out of this world, and the figure renderings looked really, really cool. But man, oh man, does that seem like something that's going to be an uphill battle.
Well, yeah, and you make a good point, because the launch price, I didn't see actually what the Kickstarter backers had to get the full program, but when it launches in September, the price point is $80 to buy into it, and that's 3 figures. The whole program, your Bluetooth stylus, all of that, but 3 figures, $80 is one steep price point to jump, and
it's not gonna. It's cool as heck.
Right.
That's the sort of thing. We have folks contact us regularly saying that they're working on large surfaces that they want to do. Essentially, they're trying to do a game table, and they would like to package somehow with us, work with us. And our response is that the price is going to knock you out of it. Like, it's never going to be efficient enough as it is to get in. You look at Nintendo right now is trying all they can to make this Amiibo launch coming up, and it's going to be such a crazy uphill battle to get people to. I just want to play Smash Brothers. I don't want to go buy these figures, and you've got me on the hook for another thing. There are people who are upset with us that we have a recurring subscription, and that's what keeps the servers aren't just going to be up for one time. Like, it's got to keep going, and if you want us to add things, we need to get paid so that we've got a reason to stick around and keep adding things. So it's just such a rough. Yeah, I don't know how you get it done.
You can certainly just have servers this month and not next month. I'm sure a business model works that way.
Yeah, I'm so new, and that's one of those things that there was a period after the Kickstarter where we were growing rapidly, and we hadn't figured out how we were going to monetize afterwards. What exactly the model was going to be. That was a scary, dark period of just going, man, can we do this? Like, this will exist for 6 months and then it'll go away. It was cool, but.
Well, let me ask you this, because we're talking about monetization here, and Roll20 has always struck me as unique in this regard, because the current set of monetization, as we the public see it, it's based on having the supporter and the mentor programs, which is the $5 a month and the $10 a month. They're $4.99 and $9.99 because I've got to do my marketing thing, right? But see, the interesting thing is, when I look at the benefits that you get for that price, and when I talk to the members of the GM Academy, pretty much universally I hear that I'm not paying it because of the benefits I get. There's a couple cool things. There's a dynamic lighting. There's the extra space for your upload library. There's all of that. But I'm paying it to support the program. And likewise, when you initially launched your Kickstarter, and like I said, I was unaware of it at the time. I think I was probably unaware of Kickstarter at the time. But I don't know how well it did. Obviously, well enough to launch. But I would see that I assume on the initial Kickstarter it was going to be this is going to be a free program. Was that pretty much from the initial launch?
It was. I mean, we wanted the base to be free, and we left ourselves some wiggle room in terms of what we could or couldn't do in the future. But the idea was that we were going to take care of the people who backed the Kickstarter no matter what. Mm-hmm. And the people who backed the Kickstarter do have subscription level features no matter how they backed the Kickstarter. It depends some on where they are as in terms of what they got in the aftermath, but I think 1,800 people that did that, and then we actually took over after the fact Tabletop Forge's Kickstarter when they decided that they were going to stop development. We took their backer list and integrated all those people as well, and so they've been treated the same in terms of backers. And it's just we left ourselves some room because we weren't certain exactly how we were going to be able to make it run, but the backers were somebody that we. It didn't matter. Everybody else was going to have to worry about the longevity, and they were not. Was really our internal thought process as we were trying to figure out how do you make this a business and how do you keep it running. But in terms of what the subscriptions had initially, I know Richard and I said in front of people multiple times, like doing interviews like this, that when we launched subscriptions, we ourselves would not subscribe if we were just a player looking at it because there weren't the features there to be worth it yet. And I'd say we finally turned that corner about 8 months ago. Oh, gosh, I should say earlier than that now. So that last time I said 8 months ago was a long time ago. I would say probably 8 months before Rugged Reroll would be when it really started to feel feature mature in a way. So with Rugged Reroll and Data Delve, that's felt like gravy as far as where I would be as a subscriber. But yeah, it took a little while to figure out, what would make this worthwhile and what would make this, because we wanted it to be a value that wasn't just charity, because we knew as the system grows, there are going to be people who don't experience it as it. We start to get emails now that kind of assume that we're a large corporation. That why?
Hold on. You have to be a large corporation. The conversation we had before this podcast is about your new desk, which I assume is going to be a nice big
it's a very nice desk, but it's a consignment desk. It's allegedly they say it's a $4,000 desk, but they were selling it for $450. So I don't know how that works. There's some dings on it, but consignment's a beautiful thing. I need this desk. I can't wait for this desk. It's so big.
Because anyway, you're clearly going corporate.
I am. My $450 desk that I've been working off a glass desk with no shelving and no space on it for the past 7 years.
Are you gonna move?
I'm finally getting a big boy desk.
Are you also gonna move into like a leather chair and not a beach chair that you're sitting on?
I don't know. I haven't decided about that yet.
I don't know if that's a comfort thing or just
it's a little bit of
because there's a cup holder.
Cheap. Yeah, it works.
I get a cup holder with it, of course.
It's a butterfly slingback. That's what it is. I like to be held as I'm working. But
well, okay. So you mentioned obviously long-term growth plans for Roll20, but would you certainly agree? I mean, very much from the onset through its whatever first year of inception. I mean,
oh yeah, it was charity. Like there's no two ways. There's no two ways around it. That there were people who were just, we think this is cool. We think you guys are approaching this the right way, and we want to donate to you. And our goal was to get to a point where we were no longer, where we knew as we got bigger and there were going to be people who were viewing us as a bigger entity and the establishment. I mean, because now we're the biggest virtual tabletop out there. We're the establishment now. And so it can't be a donation anymore. It has to be, there's a business that is there's a product that's worth you buying. And I think we finally turned that corner, like I said, about 8 months before Rugged Reroll was the point where, all right, now there's something here.
And just for the people listening, about how long ago did Rugged Reroll go out?
Rugged Reroll was last October. So I think we first did subscriptions in September of 2012, and then probably February of 2013, about as we were getting ready, as we were getting all the. I mean, there's a period there if you look back at the changelog where there's an update every 3 weeks, and we just went nuts. I mean, we fixed everything that we could find. I'm gonna bring this up for my own. So
that's
in
fine.
2013, January 28th, March 13th, April 8th, April 30th, May 14th, June 4th, June 6th, June 25th, July 16th, August 6th. We did a lot of updates to really get the bulk. I mean, we were in the trenches as far as getting feedback, doing surveys, figuring out how we needed to improve and get better. And that was after we had done all that the first time around, when we were in a closed beta working with people to try to get the program from excuse our mess to we're an actual open thing that people can use. So there was a 2-year period where Roll20 was we're doing this all the time, and it is it definitely. I mean, startups have a toll. Like there was no doubt about it that it was a lot of work. But man, oh man, it's so cool to be on the other side of it now and to be able to look at it and really breathe as we look at new features. Like, right, I know what the next thing we're working on is, and we've started some work on it, but we're not sitting there like, if we don't get this done tomorrow, we're doomed.
Okay, I assume the next thing that you're working on is clearly the function to handle 450 member groups, right?
No, but that is a conversation though, like in terms of what you guys and especially a lot of the different language-based groups. I mean, it's mostly social groups. It can be anything from we're into anime to we're into erotica, and there's a very large erotic role-playing group out there as well. Yeah.
Can you shoot me that link when you get a chance?
It's go to Looking for Group. It's very easy to find. They try to advertise under everything. But it's one of those things that we built it based on the idea that, well, you're going to want to find people to play a system. You're going to want to find somebody to play Mouse Guard. You're going to want to find somebody to play
Legend of the Five Rings.
Legend of the Five Rings. You're really into that.
It's the best system ever made. Sorry.
Is that a new game that you're trying out, Jim?
Yeah.
I haven't heard you mention that before. Is that a new game system you're trying out?
I'm shocked I haven't said anything about Legend of the Five Rings before. Legend of the Five Rings is such a good system. The best system I think I would compare Legend of the Five Rings to would be Legend of the Five Rings.
Oh, man.
Wow. That's some praise. But we figured that everybody was going to be based in things like that, and so we built Looking for Group around that instead of the idea that people would be more interested in just who am I playing with and what are play styles, or just simply what's the language that's being used, or hey, I just want to exclusively talk about what's happening with game mastering. These were not things that we were prepared for, and we weren't prepared for it. I think the first time that we saw a supergroup was 4chan. They were using. Have you ever heard of? I think it's Mordheim is the name of the game. Okay. It's essentially a Warhammer type game, except it's small units. So it's little cluster squads instead of a full-on army. And so they were using a Roll20 game to set up essentially duels. So as everybody is in this one giant game and saying, all right, you and you are going to go and play this fight. And then Jim and I are going to go and play the next fight, and so on and so forth. And we looked at it, we're like, what in the heck are there 300 people doing in this room? Like, I don't understand what they could possibly, it can't work. But we've made a lot of changes on the back end, and now it's trying to figure out, I mean, the biggest problem right now with something like GM Academy is that a basic game is meant to show you.
I think that's the biggest problem. It's not big enough.
It's meant to show you there are 6 people here, and here are the 6 people, and you can mouse over them and look at their profiles. And when there's 450 people, you don't care. Like, that's too many people to look at all their profiles and all the things they say about themselves. Like,
for the record, I care about each and every one of you.
You're a liar. You can't name all the 450 people.
Oh, okay. Now I got to bring the site up. Okay, hold on a second.
Challenge.
I'm crashing Roll20. I'm going to bring it up.
Don't crash yourself is the thing. Aren't you the one recording this?
Yeah, I'm going to record it.
Frame rate's going to go to...
We're going to
explode. But no, it really is a thing that we were not looking at in the beginning. And so there are changes to looking for group and the group system that we want to make in the near future. I think the very next thing is going to end up being card decks. As a matter, I know that we've got some of that started, and some of that is going to be tied to the launch of Simple System, which is a Kickstarter that we were pretty vocal about our support of, because it's an actual system that was built using the designer of the game, built it within Roll20, tested it with us, and really so many times we're hesitant to work with somebody who's doing a Kickstarter because we delivered our dates. Like, that was really, really important to us, is that we were not going to be a day late with anything. And we really got the feeling that, he had modules set up in a way that he could get this out on time. And so the challenge to us then is to turn around and make certain that he needed like 2 other things to the card decks that would help him out a lot. And so we are trying to get those before he goes live.
I was about to say, is his Kickstarter up yet, or it sounds like not the case?
It's completed, actually.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
So yeah, Simple System was the name of it. It completed. We'll be selling stuff for it on the marketplace just regularly once it's done. But he's been testing it, and it's a really cool system. I would say the quick and dirty description of it is that instead of using dice, it's using cards for your skills in I'm really good at this, I'm okay at this, and I'm bad at this. And so by using cards in that way, if you're really good at it, it's not increasing the number. Like, you're not rolling a 1 through 12 because your axe is doing more damage. You can still get a 1 there and do crappy. So what it does is it kind of lifts the whole of the area. You're drawing from the good deck, and so your chance is now 8 through 12. And so it makes sense in sort of portioning off what you're better or worse at. It's a really slick little game. The design of it is it's such a smart, clean design package. It's just fun to look at it has a very Google look to it in terms of how crisp it is. It's a really fun system.
It hurts my eyes sometimes.
It is a bright game. There's no doubt about that. If you're wanting a murky, dark game, Simple System is not as it currently is designed, is not for you.
Let me. I always hate to take conversation back a step, but let's go back a step, because we're talking a lot about funding, and one of the things that has really I come from a very much a traditional marketing background and a business development background, so I do in professional life. And one of the things that fascinates me about the direction a lot of stuff in our hobby is going is honestly this Kickstarter system, and sort of with what you all did, and also because we talked about Golem Arcana earlier with what they did. They got $500,000 donated to them. I call it donated to them from essentially a bunch of people, with the promise that within a year we are going to deliver a product for you. And to me, that is fascinating. And I also see a lot of these indie games that don't go the Kickstarter route, and some of the others are doing the buy and pay what you want model, even if what you want is zero. Here's our PDF, download it, pay whatever you want. And it's a really interesting and different, and again, from a traditional marketing standpoint, it goes, you all are insane, why would you ever do this? But yet over and over and over again, we see it's working. It's clearly working for people. From someone who's been on the other side of that aspect of, been the one that you're getting a lot of ground support from people that, obviously when the Kickstarter ended, it wasn't like Roll20 went live that next day.
Actually,
did it?
It did.
Oh,
and that was
that
was incredibly important to us. And we come from a different time frame in terms of Kickstarter. Like you said, you weren't even certain if you were aware of Kickstarter in April of 2012. Right. But it was crazy important to us that the closed beta started that weekend. Like, Roll20 Kickstarter ended, and I think it may have been 2 days before we were up and people were using it. So we were before the Kickstarter went live, we had the system good enough that there were 5 of us that played like 3 games on it. And then the Kickstarter was only going to be 18 days because we decided that if it didn't do well, we were going to bury it and never speak of it again. We had done a few business things together, and we had just come to a point where it's like, if this works, it works. If it doesn't work, let's move on to the next thing. And so, like I said, it wasn't built as a business originally. It was built for us to play, and then it was like, well, should we try this as a business? So we put it on Kickstarter, 18 days. We asked for $5,000, and if we'd gotten $5,000, again, old school Kickstarter, you weren't thinking about, well, I'll set the bar really low so that we raise tons of money. $5,000 was really what we wanted to make. We made $39,000 in 18 days, and we knew, all right, so this is a different ball. We had made our initial ask within the first 36 hours, and so we just got to work behind the scenes, really making certain that, as soon as this Kickstarter ends, we want people in and getting to experience it, so that they're pleased with what that they put money forth. We don't want there to be complaints. We don't want there to be, where is this? We want people to actively see what's been done and what we're doing. And there are tons of changes that happened in that closed beta. And the thing that kept us, so we switched from closed beta to open beta about a month and a half in. And the thing that kept us in beta another month and a half to 2 months after that was that we were built on a beta for Firebase, which is our real-time sync server, and they hadn't figured out some things in terms of keeping steady, and so we weren't at a 99.9% uptime. We were struggling at like a 96, 95% uptime, which is just terrible. Like, you think, 95% of the time is not. No, that's the end of the universe. If you've got an online service that it's down that much of the time. And so after those things got figured out, it was off to the races, and we considered ourselves truly open. I think it was July or August of 2012. But it was really crazy important to us to not be a charity case. And I think there are still people that approach it like that and definitely get lucky there and make lots of money. And at the same time, I think there are fans that feel good about. I supported somebody making a go at it, and they obviously tried. But there are so many of these things that I think there are more and more Kickstarters now that we see failing or just squeaking by, just barely hitting their funding because they don't look at it in terms of, they don't try to figure out what a product is that they're getting out the door and crunching the numbers for it. With $5,000, we could have had what Roll20 was at that point in time, there and working for a small group of people. And if we needed to, cut the cord in a way that it could be open source or something one of these days. And we were able to get it to a model. And I prefer having a hosted model to, and I think most people honestly do, to just an out there floating model, because people can put all sorts of things in that I don't want to touch. That's really true. Is that
having something established helps with anything, though, because if you have something established in the structure, people know what they're getting into, and having the API allows people to mod it and change stuff. But having some type of standard is really important.
Even with the API, though, there are things on that we limit. And there are things even visually that we've limited throughout the site that in terms of skinning. I think an example of this would be, you look at Obsidian Portal does a lot more with skinning than we've ever done, because we want the product to look a specific way. Because we want there to be an idea. We don't want somebody who's coming to a tabletop for the first time and you've got your crazy, overly painted goth elves thing there, and they're just like, this is not my jam. Like, this website looks like it was built, it's GeoCity, it's 1999. I need to run. And we wanted to avoid that if at all possible and really give something that was consistent. Terrible things may happen inside the interface, but the sides of it are going to be that same crisp, clear, nice clean. Like,
I try to make all my games feel like it's in a basement. So I'm bringing it back. That if you don't have a basement, you just come to my games, and it will feel like a basement. I even have like the dripping sound and the echo effects and everything. Every once in a while, you hear like a mom yell down the stairs. That's how I always set my games up.
And this is one of the differences, again, between me and wonderful Keegan over there. Of you grasp on so much of that old school mentality, and I look at it as, no, tabletop is now the new thing, that we are out in the light, and that business people will play on lunch, and that we will go do retreats for.
Coming from comics, it was really, really important to me that our model, and it impacted us in a few different ways. One, the marketplace being as creator centric as it is, we weren't out there just hiring people to do work for us and not cutting them in on rights or giving them money. You keep your rights, you get your cut of the profits, and it's clear and it's out there, and people know you get 70%, and that's what we want the thing to be. That was something that was a result of my time in comics. But another thing is that we were going to be inclusive to everybody. So many comic book stores have this jerks, straight white men only mentality that's really creepy. The way that they want to build up these barriers, and they want to say, you're a faker if you don't know this thing about Green Lantern in 1970. Screw that. Like,
everyone should know Green Lantern 1970. Let me start with that statement.
No, that's not cool. and I think that's been very important to us from the outset, was that everybody, we're a safe place to play. And I think that's one of the reasons that we have seen success, is that there are people who are willing to try out gaming on Roll20 who, even though they may live in a metropolis where they've got options to go play, they're still going to try us first because it's safer. And that's crazy important to us. And I think that's one of the best things that we have done as far as a company mindset goes.
And you're absolutely right. I mean, because like you say, from that safety aspect, and we've had a lot of talks with some of the people, especially when we talk about getting into women involved more with the game, because obviously they're severely underrepresented, in our hobby, and talking.
That's not entirely true.
Well, compared to populations, that they are, we're nowhere close to 50,
representation in terms against population. Yeah, in terms of what the perception is, but the actual numbers as far as women in gaming, I think anybody, and this is one of those things that anybody who is actually in a World of Warcraft guild knows that it's bull, because there are so many women gamers out there. The numbers now are in excess of 40% as a bare minimum. If you have the most male-centric game out there, the minimum number of females in the population for that game is 40%. I really believe that now, and it only goes up from there in terms of numbers. And I think that the game, the realization should have happened for everybody with World of Warcraft, just in terms of how large and vocal the female population was for that game. But I think when I look out at popular live streams of Roll20, and I'm hopping around Twitch, there are all women games. There are half women, whatever, any gamut that you can imagine in terms of composition, it's there and out in the open, and is the truest representation of population is probably for us a 45-55%. It's 45% women. And
I just, out of curiosity, I don't know, do you actually, I can't remember when I fill out my profile if I selected a gender or not. Do you all actually keep track of that, or is that just your own?
You don't. And as a matter of fact, I would expect here in the next couple months, Riley may not want me announcing this yet, but I'm going to go ahead and do it because it's just too on topic not to, is that we're going to request people to take gender off of drop-down menus for character sheets for the non-binary population. It's fill in the blank, because we've gotten inquiries about that. And that was one of those things that we've made that approach in terms of what we were doing, but we didn't think about making that stipulation for the community-generated character sheets. And it is something that's important and that we get questions on, because just the way the population is built, that there are a lot of non-binary users of Roll20. So
Oh, and you're absolutely right. And it goes into to sort of everything, when you talk about, and sort of what we started this subject with, of the fear of walking into a game group, and the, from a face-to-face standpoint, the, you walk into a group of, like you said, straight white males sitting around a table, playing tabletop in a dark room with their own code. To break into that world is really difficult, and was really difficult.
It's difficult as a straight white male.
Oh yeah,
it's not necessarily a friendly place as the most privileged guy in the world. So I think
right, and now I've got to tell a quick story that I've told on our coffee hours before. But my very first experience ever with tabletop. Oh, this is a level of nerd. I used to go to the local game shop and I competitively played Yu-Gi-Oh. Okay, big fan of card games. Yu-Gi-Oh, Magic the Gathering, Gundam Wing, DBZ. You throw a card game at me, I've probably played it. Huge fan of them. So we would sit and we would play the Yu-Gi-Oh card game on one side of the game shop. And on the other side of the game shop on Saturday mornings, we had the Dungeons and Dragons people. And now looking back, I realized that I'm pretty sure they were playing second edition. And there was a clear divide of us looking at them and going, nerds, and them looking at us and going, kids. And that was the clear divide. Well, one day, I, in my infinite wisdom, decided I was going to breach the gap between groups. And after the tournament, and I inevitably probably lost, I went over, or I'm sorry, I win every single time. Morphing Jar, great card. I go over to them and I go, let's teach me how to play this game. And the first thing they did, they looked at me, they stacked 5 books in front of me and go, you can start reading there. And I went, how about a quicker approach? And I actively tried, and we got into town, and we started doing role-playing, and me being me, I said something wrong, and I was told that the wizard cast a spell and froze me in time for 6 hours, and we play real-time. First ever experience with tabletop. And I then didn't touch it for another about 5 years until someone else brought me into a group that was a little more welcoming, a little more friendly, and all of that. And you're exactly right. There's that stigma so much detached to it. And when I talk to people about Roll20, one of the things I've heard that they really like about it is if I feel uncomfortable, if I don't like it, if it's inappropriate, it's one click and I'm gone from these people forever.
Yep.
It's that easy I'm gone.
And I think that it's important in terms of, I was talking earlier about the looking for group system, and it is a thing that at the end of the day has to be better than Match.com because it's got to work in a way that gets 4 or 5 people together that want to be around each other and share this experience that is in some parts competitive, in many more parts collaborative, in a way that to nail that and to get that right is really, really, really hard. And it takes a lot to make that a group that's going to last and do multiple games. So as far as the inclusiveness goes, I think that we have been very, very lucky just in the overall culture that we've had on the message boards and the like as we've gone through this. But to just have I think the community overall has been vocal enough about wanting to keep this a safe space, and I think that we've at least made a good try at continuing that. And I do, like I said, some of that though comes from my time in comics and just seeing the worst, because comics is another industry where it is a closed off club of real jerks at times, and being around that, a whole lot of revelations that made me go, all right, so if I'm ever in a position where I've got anything to say about this, what do I not do? I've had the demo in front of me now.
I gotta say real quick is that the feature that I've noticed is that it breaks down the cliquish behavior of gaming stores. Because, naturally, if you visit the same place over and over, you are going to get feel like entitled, and this is an exclusive thing. It's ours, and you're an outsider coming in. And the interface that Roll20 has made doesn't have that cliquish behavior. Some groups can make their own, but generally overall, I think it's inviting because it doesn't have that cliquish behavior. And that's one of the reasons, as when I was like, man, I really want to role play again, and I saw these virtual tabletops and I tried a few of them out, it was the easiest one to get into, and it had the fewest barriers. And I was like, okay. And I didn't even have to confirm my email, and I'm already trying to make a game. Yep. Okay, this is,
and I can live with this. That's good to hear, because that's what we wanted. We wanted a system where you could just come and give it a shot and feel like you didn't have to be crazy educated and all these things. I think some of this goes back to fiddling around some with something like map tools or with something like fantasy grounds and stuff like that, there's such a barrier just to get into the program and understand what it is you're attempting, let alone trying to play 4th edition's Dungeons and Dragons for the first time. Even if you just have that distilled down to reading the player's handbook, that's a big old handbook with a whole lot of choices and a whole lot of things that you got to figure out. And the only way to introduce somebody new is to do some hand holding and to make it as simple as you possibly can in terms of, all right, let's try and have fun in this area. And I really do feel like we've done we've made a good go at it in terms of what we've done thus far, and I'm excited to see how that plays out in the future.
And before this gets wrapped up, I do want to throw in one thing that nobody's talked about this whole time, and it's my favorite feature. It's not the tool, it's not the maps, it's not the looking for groups, it's none of that. It's the music. I am such a music person. I will have music in every scene. Every action scene has to have its own music. Sometimes characters will get their own themes. I am such a music person that is my favorite part. I hope someday that can be organized more, or library stores and stuff. But I understand it's streaming from some other source. I understand that. But I just wish I could make a library of 100 different things.
And that's what SoundCloud has been so great.
I love the music feature. That is my favorite feature more than anything else, because I'm pretty identical on Roll20 and off Roll20. But that music feature is so awesome. I love it.
It is good times. It is something that it brings together a party and an experience in a way that is really, really fun.
My group gets upset if there's not music, because we have it going for the 4 hours. And if there's not music, and if it dies, they're like, hey, did the music die? Is there something wrong with my computer? And sometimes I just don't have the music. And they're like,
yep.
Well, what's going on? Did I lose it? Oh, hold on, guys. I got to reset. Because they want that immersive experience. And I love that feature. Wearing headsets, it pulls it in even more. Love it.
Agree.
So thank you. That's a personal thing.
That, and yes, a big final thank you to Nolan, to the dev team. Again, Roll20 has been so instrumental, from a personal level in my growth within tabletop and my enjoyment of the hobby. Again, the GM Academy would not be here. It would not exist without Roll20. And we are, just deeply grateful for everything that you've done. Again, not just for us personally, but for the entire hobby as a whole and pushing into the 21st century. It is just a fantastic program. We love it to death. And Nolan, thank you so much for coming on. The final question I wanted to ask you, though, sort of the end of the interview. Based on what you've said, do I understand that the new motto of Roll20 is going to be better than Match.com?
No.
I want to see that on the banner.
Our hope and prayer for the looking for group system is that eventually it will provide you a group of people that you really want to play with instead of just there are things as simple as somebody pointed out to me this past week is that it doesn't even have text versus voice only, or versus voice and video in terms of options. It's like, we need to get that on there, because that is a thing that Schisms groups very early. There was somebody not that long ago that we had to message them about changing their name because their name was no effing Skype. Bill, no effing Skype. It's like, no, you can't. No, like don't do that. I guess your frustration for the looking for group system is that you don't want to deal with this outside program, and that's okay. But you can't do it. You can't promote that in that way.
Well, there we go. Thanks again for being on Behind the Screen, Nolan. It has been an absolute pleasure talking with you. Of course, this has been Behind the Screen. I am your host, Jim McClure of the GM Academy, our other host, Keegan, and our special guest, Nolan. Again, look for these things to come out every single 2 weeks with a new special guest, a new topic, and, well, just pretty much a lot of us rambling. Thanks for listening. We'll see you all at the table.